Kia ora. Welcome to Baptist People. My name's Charles Hewlett.
And I'm Catherine Heslop.
In our roles as National Leader and Executive Advisor within the Baptist Churches of New Zealand, we daily have the privilege of bumping into interesting people.
These podcasts give us the opportunity to introduce them to you and to let them shape us as we endeavour to bring gospel renewal to people and places.
In conversation, we explore something of their story.
Why do we find them so interesting? What are they giving their lives to? Where does the motivation come from?
We reflect together on both the highs and lows of their journey. Thanks heaps for taking the time to listen in. In this episode, I talk with Sarah. Sarah, along with her husband Paul, founded the Loyal Workshop, a business that brings freedom to women in the red light area of Kolkata, where it's estimated 2,000 people are trapped in the sex trade. We talk together about having audacious dreams and the enormous cost that comes along with them. I started by asking Sarah what motivated her to make such a bold and brave decision for Jesus.
My husband and my kids and I have just got back from 11 years serving overseas. So we've been working in a red light area in Kolkata, India. We started a small business that makes leather products called the Loyal Workshop. That is an alternative employment opportunity for women who are wanting to exit from the sex trade. That's up and running now. It doesn't need us, so we're back here in New Zealand, settling into New Zealand. I've never felt like a very brave or bold person, so I don't really identify with those terms. I'd like to actually give you an answer to this question that I would have given before I got sick, and then later on I'd actually like to add to it, if that's all right with you, Charles.
Yep, absolutely. Go for it.
2 layers of answers.
Yeah.
So I feel like God was working in my heart for a very long time to help me understand his dreams for gospel renewal. So I vividly remember being 19 years old at a Tony Campolo talk at Parachute Festival. Yep. And just felt like out of nowhere, I sensed God saying to me, I want you to serve the poor overseas. And it really shook me. And being 19, I thought I'd be getting on the plane in a few months, but actually took 10 years. 10 years of service in New Zealand and learning what it means to seek the kingdom in New Zealand settings and seek gospel renewal in West Auckland where I was living. And God taught me a lot, and my neighbours taught me a lot in that time. Also, reading scripture was very influential for me, studying at Carey Baptist College and learning God's heart for those who society regards as worthless. Is something that really stood out to me as I read the scriptures, really getting to know God's heart. And I'd done a business degree, and the whole time I was studying business, I was not really interested in making lots of money for the CEO. What I was interested in is how business could be used as a tool to empower people on the margins, empower marginalized people. And so we went to visit a free set back in 2002, and man, this experience was huge for me because I saw, in a way I had never seen before, the gospel come alive. I saw incredible gospel renewal, going from walking the lanes of the red light area and seeing women enslaved to then going into this little factory and seeing women's lives being transformed. So that had a huge impact on me. And coming back to New Zealand after that trip, the particular issue of human slavery sat with me. So, how could it be in this modern age that slavery continues? So there was something that's about this particular issue of injustice that started to become personal for me. And I how can I say to my grandchildren that I looked people that were enslaved straight in the eye, and then I did nothing about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just became this area of injustice that took a hold of my heart. And God's love for his people and his particular interest in showing special care and concern for the marginalized, and the sense of God wanting to bring justice into those situations of profound injustice have been the drivers for me.
Yeah.
Doing something crazy like moving my family to a red
Yeah.
light area in Kolkata.
Huge decision, Sarah. What did this decision cost you?
Yeah, it is a huge decision. It felt scary. It felt definitely outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
It did cost me a lot, and it also cost my children and my mum and a lot of people. A few of the things specifically, I had to let go of pursuing the New Zealand dream.
Yeah.
So climbing the career ladder, buying a house with the white picket fence. I really wanted to do that as well. So I had to decide if I was going to follow the fire that God had started in me, or I was going to let that fire die and instead pursue what the culture was telling me to put my energy into. So I actually see letting go of the New Zealand dream as a cost and also a gift. Coming back to New Zealand now, there are people that seem quite worried about us being so far behind in the property market. You know, these 11 years that we could have been working towards climbing the property market, and we are currently living in a caravan, you know, so the people are concerned about us, but I'm not. I feel like, I mean, our goal has always been to seek first the kingdom of God and trust that God will work the other things out, and he hasn't let us down yet.
And I've seen that caravan, Sarah. It's in a beautiful part of New Zealand.
It is. We can't complain. It's beautiful here. So I had to also, it cost me also letting go of the illusion of control. And I say the illusion because I think it is an illusion. In New Zealand, it's easier to pretend or believe that we have things under control, and it is just not possible to live under that illusion in India. Life is too chaotic, there's too much suffering, and the illusion of control is shattered on a daily basis. But actually I found that to be also a gift too. While it's very scary at times to be profoundly aware of my lack of control, it also gave me a daily opportunity to keep trusting God. Also comfort is another thing we had to give up. Living in heat and dirt and noise and suffering is deeply uncomfortable, and I never got used to it. And coming from a culture that values comfort very highly, it was very uncomfortable for us, but I also found that to be a gift as well, because it helped us to keep remembering that comfort is not the ultimate goal. It is purpose. And also costs, like being away from loved ones, which just sucked. It was just really hard. And being away from the outdoors. Our family loves the outdoors, so the concrete jungle was it was not good for our bodies or our minds to be in a concrete jungle for that long. So that was another cost for us as well.
Sarah, you indicated, you talked before about being sick. I know that there was a high cost for you personally. Are you able to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So back in 2018, I thought I was doing fine. We were through the hardest part of launching the business. Our team was getting strong. My self-care regime was better than ever. But so I thought everything was ticking along nicely, but yet I had a sense that everything was about to hit the fan. And on the 7th of August at 6 p.m, I suddenly became very unwell. So I was in the workshop and I had a panic attack, and I all of a sudden couldn't walk down the street because the sensory overload was so much that I would get really confused. I was having rage outbursts and throwing things around the room.
Yeah.
I was having terrible nightmares, sleeping 11, 12 hours a night. It was a big shift in an instant. And I've got a terrific supervisor who talked with a clinical psychologist and said, Sarah, you've never been like this before. This is significant. We think that you might be suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
And I think you need to leave the country before you start having psychotic episodes. And I thought to myself, yep, she's right. I need to leave.
Wow.
And so I went to Thailand and had 2 months of intensive trauma therapy there. And actually, when I got on the plane to go to Thailand, my assumption was that the trauma I would be dealing with was all of the things that had happened to me since I arrived in India. But actually, it became very quickly apparent that actually the majority of the trauma that was surfacing was actually about the first 5 years of my life.
Wow.
So it was after Thailand, I came back to New Zealand, and it was a 2-year healing journey of recovery for me. So mainly processing the trauma from the first 5 years of my life. So as we know, the first few years of life are very important. My father was abusive, and he separated from my mum when I was 5. So up until that point, I was fearing for my life. Right. And trauma I had buried deep, like I didn't even know it was there. As a small child, all started coming to the surface. And so I since learnt that I had, maybe at the age of 5 or 6 or 7, had developed all these ways of coping that got me through all the way to 30 years of age, and then those coping strategies broke and they didn't anymore.
Yeah.
So it was very hard work to process the trauma. Treatment once a week for 2 years, and I think actually this is probably the bravest thing that I've ever done. But actually, I can absolutely say now that getting sick was not a cost for me, but an incredible gift. I think that our body holds trauma. So India didn't do this to me. It probably brought it to the surface maybe a decade earlier than it would have come to the surface. But actually it coming to the surface and me having space to process it and become well is just an incredible gift. And I feel like a totally new person to what I was before. Feels like 2 halves of my life. So for the first time in my life, I really feel free to become who God created me to be, which is very exciting for me.
Yeah, brilliant.
So going back to your first question, what drives a person to do something crazy like moving to a red light area in Kolkata? So part of my driver was definitely my childhood trauma. So during my treatment, I began to realize this, part of the reason I went to India to work with incredibly vulnerable women and children is to seek out the happy ending that I never got in my childhood.
Right.
So seeing women fight for their freedom and experience this incredible healing and renewal was what I needed. It was what I wasn't getting with my childhood situation, the happy ending. So part of my driver was a selfish one. And I can remember distinctly driving to therapy one day and just crying and saying to God, I thought I'd moved to India because for selfless reasons, I thought I'd moved to India because you'd heard the cries of the women, And now I'm finding out it's just for my own selfish needs. And I sensed God say to me, I did send you to India because I heard the cries of the woman, but I also heard the cries of little Sarah. And that was incredibly precious to me to hear that from God, that he's able to do his gospel renewal thing in such a way that he was generously able to include my renewal in the renewal of the ladies. And you know, he's big enough, and he did that. I feel so grateful that God has woven my freedom story into the freedom story of our women.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing that. Because I remember a barbecue. Excuse me. You know, one night at our place where you were chatting with us about the expectation that this would be a lifetime decision, moving out there. And so I guess my next question on the page was going to be, you know, are there lost dreams that you're having to process? But I guess you've answered that question for me.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard. I really miss the team, and I really miss the way that the gospel comes alive on the streets and bursts out from the pages of scripture, you know. And I miss the artisan, witnessing the artisan's faith and the way that it encourages my faith. But it's not nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. Not nearly as hard, and I think it's because my definition of success has changed. So I used to believe that success looked like pulling out a Mother Teresa, you know, and retiring and spending my whole life serving. And anything less than that was going to be a failure, or it was going to show that I was weak, or the worst thing, it was going to show that I was letting Jesus down. But I think that my old definition of success was informed by my ego. Because wouldn't it be amazing if I could pull a Mother Teresa? And I also think that it was informed by some unhealthy models of service, that if you're not suffering all the time, then you're not serving Jesus. Working in the red light area in Kolkata is, as you can imagine, extremely difficult and taxing on health and relationships. And I began to notice patterns in the wide network of people we knew doing similar work, and we were able to see very few examples of people that were doing this service in a healthy way for more than 10 years. So I began to question, maybe this lifetime sign up that we'd adopted was actually setting ourselves up for failure. If there's a natural, you know, generally speaking, if there's this natural limitation that Kiwis start to become unwell after a maximum of 10 years, then maybe 10 years should be a maximum. Surely the goal ought to be to leave well, not an absolute wreck. And I think that God is very aware of our human limitations, because he created us with those human limitations. It's more me that struggles with accepting those limitations, you know. And if we talk about loyal being a freedom business, if we're authentically practicing freedom business, then everybody's freedom ought to be growing, including the volunteer foreigners who are serving with the artisans. So now I don't see coming home as a failure. I actually see it as a roaring success. We managed to hand over this precious baby of ours into the capable hands of our local team, and we left while they still miss us. They weren't praying for the day that we'd leave. And COVID actually created this really unique situation that they had been forced to figure out how to run the business without foreigners. So it created this really unique opportunity for us to step back and allow the others to keep being empowered up into leadership and ownership of the business. So I truly believe that leaving was the healthiest option for myself and my family and the team.
Yeah, because you did create something quite beautiful, Sarah. Yeah. What brings you the most joy when you think about Loyal?
Oh man, absolutely, and it's witnessing gospel renewal among our staff. It brings me so much joy that my heart nearly explodes sometimes. It feels like it's too much.
Yeah.
Watching the women experience gospel renewal in their lives is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's not only intangible, it's tangible. We can see it. Like one of our women, I'll give an example of. When we first started doing brothel visitations down her lane and met her, we struggled to, because we learnt meeting so many people, we struggled to remember names. So we give people weird names, and we used to call her Sad Eyes because she just looked so profoundly downcast.
Yeah. Really,
like, would have her head down. She would struggle to engage with, what have you had? What did you eat for breakfast? Really easy questions. So sad. And today, this woman, when I look at her, her eyes are not sad at all. They are so full of joy.
Beautiful.
She is dignified, the way she holds herself. And she speaks. She loves coming to work. She hates the holidays. She's so content. She just, like, the contentment she gains from stitching is just so beautiful. And just before we left India, she was talking about what joining Loyal meant for her, and she said it was like when I came to work at Loyal, it was like I was born again into a new life. Like when I was born. And she had no idea that she was referencing John. That was just coming out of her heart, So, oh my goodness, so worth it for those witnessing those stories, witnessing those lives changed.
Sitting here talking with you, I guess a conversation about audacious dreams and gospel renewal. It's easy for someone like me. It makes a lot of sense when you think about Kolkata and costs and bold decisions, which you have very helpfully redefined for me. So thank you. But does this conversation make sense for the follower of Jesus in New Zealand?
It's a great question, Charles.
Should it?
Yeah, I think that it should make sense in New Zealand context, but I think it often doesn't for people and for myself. It's exactly the same God who is transforming lives in Kolkata and exploding my heart with joy on a regular basis is at work in New Zealand too. And Jesus is inviting us to be part of his gospel renewal in our place in Aotearoa.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things, you got me asking this question, what are some of the things that stop it from making sense in our context?
Yeah.
And I actually think sometimes I prefer the idols in India because at least they're obvious.
Yeah.
The idols in New Zealand, you can see the idol sitting on someone's counter or in the corner of someone's room. But in the idols in New Zealand are subtle and insidious. And I think in particular, the idols of desire for control and certainty very strong in New Zealand. I within a month of getting back to New Zealand, every time I've come back to New Zealand, I've noticed a very strong pull happening inside of me. So I become less dependent on God. I become more insular.
Yeah.
I start hanging out with people that are middle class Pākehā like myself.
Yeah.
I start buying things I don't need. And I think that the bottom line for me is that if I believe that I am in control of my life and I'm more or less self-sufficient, I have no need for God.
Yeah.
So I have to actively do things in New Zealand to keep reminding myself that I still need God.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
welcome.
Thank you. That's challenging, eh? Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it's very much my prayer that Baptist faith communities in New Zealand bring gospel renewal to people and places in their local neighbourhoods. This is what I'm on about all the time. I feel like you and Paul did this in one of the most difficult parts of the world. Yeah. What advice would you have for Baptist people?
Now, my advice would be pay attention to the lines. Pay attention to the lines.
Okay.
I had the honour of hearing John Perkins speak. He gave a lecture in Kuala Lumpur. And for those that don't know, John Perkins is a Black American minister, an author, and a civil rights activist. So John talked about the many lines that exist in society. And these are the lines that separate one people group from another for whatever reason. So lines can divide people for many different reasons, different ethnicities, different socioeconomic groups. Lines can separate conservative Christian groups from LGBTQI community. Lines are everywhere in society. And he said these words that have become defining words in my life. There are two really important things to remember about any line that divides humans from other humans. The first thing is this: God is intensely interested in that line. And the second thing is that line is a lie. So those two things, God is intensely interested in that line, and that line is a lie.
Yeah.
And I've found that to be incredibly challenging in my own life. I've been working on my own many biases and the lines that I start drawing in my mind that other people, that make people other than me. So the other day I caught myself speaking about the Wellington protesters in a way that others them, makes them other to me. And I think anger or fear or misunderstanding can cause us to other people. But when we do that, we miss out on the richness of shared humanity. So the women at Loyal have taught me that we are far more the same than we are different. I am just the beggar who is telling other beggars where to find bread. I am not the one with the answers. But I will keep choosing to be vulnerable, to spend time with people who are different to me, to look them in the eye and find our shared humanity. There have been loads of Kiwis that have come on Loyal workshop tours over the years, come over to Kolkata and gone on a little tour of our workshop. There are those that do a proper tour as tourists and other the women by the way that they interact with them. And there are others that when they walk around the workshop and meet the women, they see their shared humanity with the women and they make themselves vulnerable, and they might attempt a few words at Bangla and make a mistake, and but the ladies have an incredible BS radar. They can tell the difference. They can tell the difference. And I think it's the same here in New Zealand. If we other people that we are serving, they will feel it and they will not be able to receive our service as love. So to love people in our place, we need to be prepared to see ourselves in them and to learn from them and to be vulnerable with them. So that would be my advice. Pay attention to the lines.
Sarah, for many years now, your kind heart and your prophetic words have made me a better person, and you have just done that again right now. So thank you for sharing so openly and honestly with us. And man, there's some challenging things that I need to go away and think about. So thank you for your time today.
Hey, thank you for listening, Charles. It's been a good opportunity for me to reflect on the awesome questions that you gave me. It's good for me, and a good challenge for me as well.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God bless you heaps.
Yeah, you too, Charles.
See
Take
you,
care.
Sarah.
See you later.